This is, this is the regularly scheduled meeting, the Town of East Bridgewater Planning Board. It's Monday evening, the 4th of January, 2021. It's 7:06 p.m. Currently present for the board, our administrative assistant, Dorothy Simpson. Associate members Kevin Riley and Sheila Glidden. Regular members present, Edward O'Leary, John Lawler, Rob Lyons, Christine Hanley, and myself, Roy Gardner. Okay. Just for the record, this meeting is being recorded. In fact, tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. First item of business is minutes from our December 21st, 2020 meeting.
Chairman, I move to accept the minutes of the 21st of December with one correction, I think, which is with regard to the discussion on Oak Street. I'll speak for myself and say that I did not vote in that matter, and I believe Sheila the same. We are recorded as being in favor.
Okay, we'll make note of that. If we could correct that last line of the minutes, Dot. That was a statutory vote because that has to do with continuing the public hearing to a second night. So make note that the two associate members did not record a vote on that particular item. That being said, did we get a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so that's a
Motion by O'Reilly and seconded by Leary.
On the corrected minutes, as noted then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll show that as a unanimous vote of all 7 present members voting in favor. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the second session of the continued public hearing for 80 Oak Street, a 3-lot residential subdivision. Applicant's representative is Michael Koska. And if you could officially introduce yourself for the record, Michael.
Sure. I'll try to speak up too, if you ask.
Before we get started, I do want to make a note of something that has come up. We can't really discuss it in the meeting tonight since it's not a planning board matter under subdivision control. But the abutter to the west of the property, the Hetmans have raised a potential issue, what they believe is an error in the lot line. I have spoken to Mr. Koska about that. Mr. Koska would be happy to go over the documentation with him that he has on record that is recorded at the Registry of Deeds, indicating where all the bound markers that he used are located and documented on plans and deeds at the registry. So that being said, under Massachusetts laws, that has to be treated as a third-party discussion between the two principals, the landowners or the representatives of the landowners. So that being said, Mr. Koska.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Koska. I am a registered engineer and a registered land surveyor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Here representing Mr. Graham in his endeavor to develop his property. Last time we spoke, it appeared that we needed some more information from town boards and so forth. I don't know if, Mr. Chairman, that you've gotten any of that information. I can continue, or we can see what maybe somebody else has said, because I haven't gotten anything in response to that from either DPW or fire department or whatever, whatever the case may be.
Okay, so we did get a brief email from DPW, and I had a fairly long discussion with John Haynes today. And John Haynes' view of this is consistent with what the planning board practices, and that is that the proposed street would have to be a public way, since that proposed street is gonna provide legal frontage and legal access to two house lots, the existing house lot where the two-family home is located, as well as the potential new house lot that's further, I guess, further west of where the existing home is.
Yep.
So, given that, his opinion, I think, is pretty much the same as we've discussed before, that we would expect to see some kind of in-ground manhole, catch basin and manhole pipe system
Right.
until we can get off to whatever corner of the property it's gonna be, where we could put some kind of a detention basin with an emergency overflow.
Right.
Expecting, given the plans that we had looked at 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago now, I guess it is, that basin be located somewhere up in what would be the northwest corner of the property, which is roughly the low point, somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay.
I think the problem we've wrestled with on multiple subdivision proposals before us the last few years is that the DPW is highly hesitant to accept any kind of a drainage system that either puts, number one, some kind of a depression along the sides of the road, which from a highway safety standpoint is not considered safe. The alternative of some kind of a in-ground parallel system to allow for the water to percolate down into the ground that's covered on the surface, since that basically requires that there be no berms, is also questionably maintainable in this part of the country over the year, especially because of the potential between 3 to 5 or 6 months of frost in the ground, as well as what happens if you have no berm on the side of the road and cars particularly keep repeatedly pulling over to park, which they have a tendency to do if there's no curbing. That tends to tear up that side of the road. So given those things and the rest, I think we'd have to have it constructed as pretty much a conventional subdivision, albeit we have typically waived roadway width to some extent on a two-lot subdivision where it appears that subdivision can't be extended. So given that, I'll let you go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that information from the DPW. If I may, board members, a rough draft of the drawing. Thank you. Has been done that maybe can assist our conversation this evening. And maybe we can come to some sort of agreement or consensus or whatever the case may be. If I may, I think the two items that we talked about last time were the underground versus overhead. The existing situation is now, the way 80 Oak Street gets its power is it comes off of pole number 6 to another pole located here, probably about 100 to 120 feet off the road, to another pole, which you can see on sheet number 2 or 4 is approximately in the middle of the circle, and it goes overhead to existing dwelling number 80. To naturally get from pole number 6 across the street, there'd have to be another pole, so there'd be at least another pole onto the property, get from one side of Oak Street to the other. So what we were proposing, or what we'd like to discuss with the board, is to allow for perhaps, and there again, we're at the mercy of National Grid to see what their layout would be. But if we could come and put this pole either here, or if we could extend it up to this point, then the existing dwelling could still have the overhead service. We have a driveway to contend with, we have water lines to contend with, we have landscaping to contend with where it's already existing overhead. But then the lot that we would like to create, lot number 3, we would go underground from the last pole to that lot. So, I think that we're gonna need at least one pole. For National Grid is gonna say, you know, they're not gonna have us, you know, cut a line underneath the roadway, you know, Oak Street. So with the
I
one.
can tell you their standard is typically to put that just inside the radius of the roadway on the main street, is how they normally do that.
But they also have a distance that, you know, these poles here, 6, 7, and 8 are roughly 105 to 110 feet apart. There again, where, you know, whatever National Grid wants to do, if that's where they say, we're gonna set the pole here and we're not going any further with it, then so.
In any case though, Mike, from what you explained before in the layout, even from what I can see on the assessor's maps, when you blow them up to their maximum size,
Yeah.
the poles go right down the middle of where the new roadway layout would be, kind of on a diagonal.
Yeah, they do, yes.
Okay.
And those poles are located accurately by field survey, so I feel confident where they are on the plan is where they actually are out in the field. So the underground, that's what we thought that perhaps we could compromise on that. We're underground to lot 3, but try to maintain the overhead on to 80 Oak Street because it's there. And in other words, that would be a discussion with National Grid. If National Grid says, like you say, well, you know, you're gonna have one pole, and if you require that house number 80 and the new house would be underground, it makes it a little bit more difficult to, you know, get underground to the existing house where it is, in fact, overhead, and, you know, comes into this, that would be the southwest corner of the house.
Okay.
Then we went, and I think the second issue, the bigger issue, was the drainage. And if we left the drainage the way we have it, which would be infiltration from this point on and the, you know, around that hammerhead, there's about 60 feet that on the profile you see the land ascends. And then 60 feet would drain towards Oak Street, and the rest of the roadway drains to the north towards the hammerhead, naturally. At a point in this area here, it breaks this way to this corner, but it also goes down to here where the low point is 98.7 on this side. So what we were thinking is that eliminate the side drainage of, that's shown on this plan, on the sides of the road. And on that handout, on that 8.5 and by 11 that I just handed out, take of equal size and volume in the hammerhead and extending out beyond it. We could couple that with a catch basin, or maybe 2 catch basins, to introduce it into the infiltration system. The infiltration system could have contactors so that there's volume within the stone, and then at some point there would be an overflow from here that would be directed to this corner. If you notice, the topography of test bit D1, which was witnessed by John Delano, there's a contour near it of 104, D2 is about 101. In both these areas, we found that water table was at 42 inches, by looking at the redoxymorphic features of mottling. And in saying that, with these soils, the water will follow the contour of the earth. That being said, the water here, 100 feet away, could be down there, so it'd be a little bit difficult to build a basin with a bottom that is 2 feet above estimated high groundwater table. It could be done, but I think that we could meet the tree and the post in this area here and direct all that runoff after meeting, storing the volume, the discharge going down to that low point, again, of 98.7. We put a Cape Cod berm on both sides of the road, if that's what the board would want to see. And we could, in lieu of an infiltration system, build a detention basin in that area. But I think that we can accomplish that, not running any numbers or anything like that, but I think that we could accomplish that with infiltration and have a high point that it would overflow into a small swale and be directed toward that corner, which would be beyond the property line of the abutter. And that's what we were contemplating after our discussion the last time, and we'd just like to run it by the board and see if that makes any sense now with the information from the highway department as far as concurring with the planning board members.
So again, back to the idea of the infiltration
Yeah.
trenches. They've got some reasonable cover on them that aren't gonna be damaged if someone decides to park their car on top. They're supposed to be 24 inches above groundwater table like any man-made. If you say that the groundwater is somewhere in the 40 to 45 inch range, we would take depending on exactly where you are. How does that work?
There's not much room for error there. Naturally, there'd be a driveway in the middle of them, so you have to separate them and put a cross pipe, either ductile iron or glass 5, which is a reinforced concrete pipe. And the contactors, generally for a Title V septic system, they're bedded in sand, which to provide H20 loading, you would bed it in stone. And once they're bedded in stone, they can make H20 where if somebody inadvertently ran over, they wouldn't collapse due to the weight. We know that we don't have much room for a shallow type system, over 2 feet, and perhaps 18 inches or so of stone and contactor or some other type of system. And then an overflow, we could provide a couple of inlets into that system by catch basins, some catch basins so that of the silt that might accumulate on the roadway from sanding or so forth would not enter the drainage facility. The lots that would front off of this street would remain in perpetuity to be a private way and not the responsibility of the DPW.
So I think we've already talked about that, Mike. That's a non-starter.
Mm-hmm.
Right out of the gate, that's a non-starter.
Okay.
If two houses get their entire legal frontage from a public way that's being created or a way that's being created under subdivision control in East Bridgewater, it has to become a public way.
Okay.
Big issues with that down the road if for whatever reason the neighbors can't agree on how to maintain the road.
Right.
Title search guys today shy away from those kind of deals. They've got a $450,000, $500,000 house on a private way. They don't want to see that. Mortgages don't want to see that. There's no way to resolve that problem at a town level once the neighbors decide they don't like each other. There's nothing we can do about that. The only way to fix that is to have it a public way.
Okay.
Second piece of that's important is under the state laws in Massachusetts, the assessors are not allowed to reduce the value of a piece of property because it's on a private way.
Okay. Yep.
That being said, that says that the landowners on those two houses have to pay the same amount of taxes as everyone else. They're gonna wanna, and we've had it repeatedly in town, people come up and say, we want our town, our roadway plowed by the state. You know, well, it's 10 years ago now, but there was that Supreme Court decision that came down that says town's gotta stop doing that. Residents want their roadway accepted by the town, there's a very clear process that has to be done by. If it wasn't approved on the subdivision, approved on the plan. There's a list of things they gotta do. They basically have to bring the road up, get their cost, meet subdivision control standards, and check.
So if I'm hearing you loud and clear, and the planning board loud and clear, basically, what we're proposing, or would need to propose, is, as shown on the plan, 9 foot or 18 feet of pavement, 8-car berm both sides, and some sort of drainage system that meets a catch basin type manhole situation with a positive overflow or outlet down in that northwest corner where it is the lowest point. See here, Mr. Chairman, that approximately, and I'm just trying to take a look at this quickly, but all of this from about this point goes this way here, the drainage pattern. From the high point here, it goes this way, and then you can see it's kind of parallel in this area. And as it goes down the hill from where this would be the proposed cul-de-sac, it goes towards that northwest corner. So what I'm trying to say is all the drainage of the road would be directed towards the northwest corner, and nothing that isn't going to the northeast corner, i.e. the house and driveway at number 80, would go towards the northwest, where nothing there would change the grade or the topography. So there wouldn't be any additional stormwater going
Yeah,
down.
and I think that's where we have to go, because is the map shows the wetlands are in fact up in the,
Yep.
up on the northwest corner. They're
Yep.
pretty extensive wetlands if you look at the assessors maps
Right.
and turn on the,
And that's why on that little sketch, I've drawn arrows to show where the overflow would go on.
the other problem was raised, and from the pictures I had already looked at, that on the easterly side, there's
Yeah.
3 houses that are basically right on those property lines. There's 98 Oak Street, 2 Victory Lane, and 4 Victory Lane.
Yeah.
There's really nowhere to go on that backside.
Right.
You don't get the wetlands anyway from there, so.
I agree, Mr. Chairman, and if you go down Victory Lane, the drainage system for Victory Lane is, I think, a series of either infiltrators or something right in that northeast corner where we come down almost touching Victory Lane. So, yeah, they recognize the fact that they need to pick up the water that was, going there naturally anyway, probably for the last, few thousand years, that, or it would be all piling onto the street right at that point. So there, from my recollection, there is some drainage right there that was planned on for Victory Lane. And I could be wrong on that, but I did take a ride down there and saw it, and thought I saw some manholes and things of that nature right at that corner, that northeast corner. But we wouldn't be putting any more down there, and I understand that the houses on Victory Lane are close to the property line, but, my testimony is that none of the laneway or roadway that we would plan would the drainage be directed toward that area. It would be all towards the northwest corner. If we were to come up with some solution that hopefully would meet the town standards, is that something that the board is, I guess that's where you're leaning towards? Whereas,
We'd have to get a positive review by the DPW, but.
Yep.
I mean, the key things, independent of what you want to call that system, the key thing is that it's maintainable long-term by the DPW without having to dig anything up. Is an oversimplification, but
Okay.
and infiltration trenches, when you're talking about the relatively narrow space between the existing groundwater table and where you're gonna put everything, as well as
Yep.
the lack of high-quality gravel drainage in that area, probably not maintainable over time.
Okay. All right, so I
That's
can see
becoming
that
a-
you're leaning towards a basin. You had a question for me the last time, Mr. Chairman, and we were talking about the pavement of the existing driveway that goes to house number 80, and the roadway that we were planning and so forth. We have calculated that the amount of driveway that would be removed from the existing one would be 4,369 square feet. Naturally, we've got to put a driveway in on lot number 1, so-called, and we have that down as 1,689, which would make it a net loss, let's call it, of 2,680 square feet. The total of the road is 6,924. If you subtract out what we've taken out, you have 4,244 square feet of new pavement, the net new pavement. But then you've got to add the amount of driveway for lot number 2 of 1,946. So we have a total new pavement about 6,190 square feet. So that was just to answer one of your questions that we talked about the last time, which 6,190 is about an area that's 60 by 100, which is not a large net area of pavement. And I'd have to take a look at the size of a basin and how it might fit in there and so forth and so on. Our soil groups are C, D, and D, so they're tight soils. And I think doing perk tests in the front, the soils weren't too bad. As we went in the back, the soils were a little bit tougher. Mr. Hetman has a good perk rate, in my opinion, of 9 minutes per inch, so he has a good soils for a septic system there. So with that, I think you kind of gave us our marching orders, I believe.
All right, thank you. Members of the board have any questions?
Nothing. Often too much to ask questions.
All right, any members in the public in the audience here for the meeting? If you do have a question, I'd ask if you could come up near in the vicinity of the table, give your name and address if you would, please.
All right, I'm Ed Hetman, I'm 62 Oak Street. I'm one of the abutters, obviously.
Yes.
He recited the perk rate. Yeah, the perk rate was good for the septic system that was installed, but the hole test was 50 feet towards 80 Oak Street, and that hole showed a lot of clay. And in fact, we didn't even want to use that area to put the system in. Even though that area was well over 100 feet from the wetland, we chose to move it further over, obviously, because the perk test was much more positive. I did give the board a copy of our title search, which was just done last week, and a drawing that I did in reference to how the title search says where our property is. And currently, that borehole that's on his property actually is not the end of the property. The end of the property is the telephone poles. I walked the property, I shot a few azimuths on the property, and did a detailed drawing on the property. My background from
All
the
right, so
military.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you at this point, because we can't legally discuss a property line error at a planning board meeting.
Okay,
That has to be discussed between the private parties. There's
can do
different
that.
ways to resolve that. If it gets to a legal way, the only legal way to resolve that is with dueling land surveyors and engineers in land court. We cannot get involved in that,
okay.
because none of us are qualified to get into that kind of discussion. We have a bunch of information which he's required, since his stamp is on that plan, to identify where each and every one of his markers are located, and the markers that he located that had previously been placed.
Okay,
That's as far as we can get. He's done that on his plan, so, as I said, when we open the meeting, you're free to talk to Mr. Koska. He's offered in the discussion I had with him to show you everything he has. But we can't get into that discussion in a planning board meeting, especially at a public hearing.
okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
I'd be more than happy to talk to you after the meeting, show you how I arrived and, you know, compare that to the septic plan to see if it kind of jives.
Okay. The other thing I noticed that all the trees in that area will be taken down. There's a lot of pine trees, and pine trees, from my research, shows that pine trees will absorb about 110 gallons a day of water over the summertime when it rains. So I'd like to know if that amount of water loss from the being drawn from the groundwater, how he's gonna make that change or add to that extra water that's not gonna drain away from the trees. There's currently.
I can answer that, in that what they're required to do is they're required to calculate the expected runoff in the pre-roof state, which includes, if it's trees, then the runoff is lower than if it's not trees. He has to use what the expected runoff is from there, the difference to that when he puts in the new road bed.
Okay,
So the more heavily treated is, the bigger the expected new runoff would be.
okay, I just want the board to be aware of that.
That's taken into account in all of the standard calculations we require as part of the subdivision control, which is one of the reasons, given the variables at the site and the expectation that the land isn't ideal beneath the surface, that we wanna make sure we get everything as best as we can. It's near to that corner, within reason, have a detention basin that will hopefully allow some of the water to perk into the ground through that basin before overflowing into that northwest corner into the wetlands.
You can understand my concern, I just put a
Yeah.
septic system in,
Yeah,
and I don't wanna
understood.
see the groundwater level start to go up, and then my system fails.
Understood.
So,
Well, may understand that.
Okay.
that's all I have.
I'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room have any questions? I got a hand back in the corner here.
How you doing? My name is Marty Colligan. I live over Victory Lane. I just have a kind of a question for you. The description of a manhole. Okay, you said there's manholes on Victory Lane.
Yeah, here's Victory Lane here, and here is our northeast corner right there. See it? Right in that area.
Okay.
And I thought that when I walked the property and I drove down,
Okay, what you're seeing is a cover, okay, is a dome cover.
Yep,
Okay, and all this is an overflow.
okay,
If you look at the town maps, okay, look at the drawings, okay?
yeah,
See where this is here?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can point it out to them easier, but it goes across, right in the corner, the northeast corner, there's a dome. And that's a drain, it goes a drain.
yep,
And that drain goes underground,
yep,
and there's an easement on my property between, the lot 6 and lot 5. There's an easement, there's a pipe that goes under the ground, and it feeds out onto this wetlands out here.
yep, yep.
Okay, now what you're doing,
Mhm.
okay, that was designed for 5 Victory Lane. This here, this pipe, all this here was designed for that.
Yep.
It was not designed to take this amount of water, was it?
Oh,
I think that the requirement that he has is to show that over the same period of time, the amount of water that's leaving that site is the same as it is pre-development. So he's not really adding any new water to that site.
Well, the overflow is going to the northeast corner. What he's got here, there's a dome there, there's one there.
Northwest corner,
Huh?
northwest corner,
Northwest corner.
This corner.
not the northeast corner.
So,
Right, okay.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, this area of the house all goes down to the northeast corner, which your engineers that did Victory Lane did a very good job, because they probably saw that,
Right.
you know, they gotta capture something here, or it's gonna just run into the street, or leave this area right here pretty wet.
Okay.
In fact, in walking this line back here, and I think I found an iron pipe over here or something, this was, you know, pretty wet on the foot, but what I have here is to take this road, which is on the west side of the property,
You're gonna take the water and you're gonna dump it on the other side?
capture it in here so that it can go into the wetlands
Okay.
over there.
Now, right now, all this water here, that you've got here,
Right,
up here, okay,
yeah,
is all wetlands, right?
yeah.
Okay, you're dumping it into this wetlands. Over here,
Mhm.
okay, lot number 4, okay, here's a retention area over there.
Right.
Is that correct?
I guess, I don't know.
Well, I'm just
I
saying
think,
it is.
let's,
Okay, I'm just saying,
Suffice-
he's putting water, he's trying to.
no, he's not, because he has to show in his calculations that he's not adding any new runoff over time. So he has to hold the water in that detention basin long enough so it
drains out, because there's one
So-
of my property right as you come in.
So it looks the same as if none of that was developed and it had just rained.
Right,
The same standards.
So we're not adding water to anywhere. That's the requirements he has to meet these days.
okay.
Right, the same standards that was applied to Victory Lane. And that was our discussing, discussion
Okay,
as
the
I.
same standard's gonna be added, so you're gonna put the same drainage that Victory Lane has, which has the 4 pipes going underneath the sidewalk and then goes to the retention area. I don't know if you allow that now.
There's a lot of ways to do drainage, and what I heard from the board tonight,
Yeah?
that they're not too keen on infiltration, they're looking for a sort of
Retention
detention
area.
basin.
Right.
It's detention, because you
Right,
put in a control structure to let the
right,
the
because that's what's,
difference of the existing to flow out on the different storm events.
right, 'cause that's what's over here,
Yeah,
okay, my
Yeah.
property,
yeah.
okay?
All right, so we gotta stop this, because we're talking about this subdivision.
Okay.
We've told
All
him,
right, yep, I understand.
we've told him we want a catch basin manhole system that
Okay, so he
collects
asked my
his water
question.
and drops it off somewhere up in that northwest corner.
Okay,
And he's required to do the calculations
yeah,
to make sure that the amount of water that leaves that site into the wetland roughly
Right.
equates what's currently leaving that site in that direction right now.
see, my question was that he said a manhole. A manhole to me is like a catch basin that goes down in the ground. and
That's
then-
correct.
Okay, that to me, and there's none of that on Victory Lane.
Understand that. And that's already been defined to be a problem by the DPW.
Right, okay.
I have to
I can see why,
satisfy
yeah.
this board and the DPW and, with their scrutiny, that it either passes muster or it doesn't, and that's what I'm.
Right.
So
that's what I
Victory
have to
Lane,
do.
Victory Lane was a test case to see how that would look, how it would work, how it could be maintained over time. And the decision back from the highway surveyor as well as the highway department section of the, I should say, the DPW commissioner and the highway department is that that's not an acceptable long-term solution, and one, because it doesn't work real well in the wintertime. That may be the biggest one.
Yep.
The issue in the wintertime is that if you've got a manhole catch basin system, it works just as good as it does in the summertime, because it doesn't freeze up.
That's correct. That's correct.
It's a major problem in the northeast. The whole northeast is wrestling with this.
Because those pipes freeze up in the winter.
The federal government has foisted upon us a stormwater management edict that's pretty stringent.
Yeah.
One of the things they want us to do is leave the water where it is. Well, in the northeast, that doesn't work real well. In fact, the whole northern part of the country, that doesn't work real well. Because once there's frost in the ground, and then you compound that by having snowbanks and all of that, a drainage system off the sides of the roads, it doesn't work real well.
Okay, yeah, so, okay.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Back to the board here. Everybody good?
I have a question. Are we gonna have this reviewed by an engineer? Since there is so many concerns about the drainage and concerns of the neighbors?
Yeah, so as of right now, I mean, so everyone in the room knows that, the planning board does not have on its current employment an engineering firm to do reviews. We're working with the town administrator right now. He has out, and I believe it's been run, an engineering request for proposals. We do have a firm we've used as a one-off to do reviews. When we get the final plans, if we have not yet identified an engineering firm to act as the engineer for the town, not just the planning board, but for the entire town, We will in all likelihood go back to that engineer once we get the final plans in hand. I can say, though, based on the discussions we've already had with the DPW, that the drainage system is going to be pretty much a manhole catch basin system with some kind of a retention/detention basin up in the back northwest corner of the property. And that the general requirement under today's land development standards is that no additional water leave that site during a storm, and that the detention basin, retention basin, and the permeability of the soils combined allows the water, if it has to leave that site, to do it only on an emergency basis, i.e. we get 3 or 4 inches of rain in a 3 or 4 hour period like we have once in a while. Actually, 4 times in the last 10 years. So that being said, the other things that we're being asked to look at in terms of the waivers, those will be decided when we actually record a vote. We will have to get a little bit of feedback from National Grid as to what the standard way to do this is. Normally, the standard way for an underground subdivision is the underground starts right at the existing public way. If the poles are on the opposite side of the street, they normally put a pole on the side of the street at the corner inside the radius of where the new roadway goes, and from there it goes underground. We'll wait and discuss that with National Grid. The general procedure that we follow these days is we do not waiver underground utilities for anything over a single lot subdivision. Anything that becomes a public way, we want to see the electricity services and all the other wired services underground. That being said, I'll ask the board again if there's any other questions or comments.
So originally, there was, from our last meeting, there were 4 waivers that you were looking for, if I have my notes right. It was above ground power. It was manhole, sidewalk, and then the hammerhead on the place in the circular. Yep. So the waiver for the manhole, we're saying that's something that we're not going to waiver.
First, I think we want to be careful with that terminology, but we can't say we're not going to waive it until we actually put a motion and a vote on the table, which we can't do until such time as we see his final design.
Okay.
Let's just put it this way, you're not in favor of the design.
Right,
It's-
exactly, okay, that's just more.
Well, let's explain that better. The DPW is saying that, in their opinion, for a long-term maintenance and maintainability under taxpayers' dollars, waiving the manhole catch basin system is not advisable, since those can be maintained pretty much by cleaning once every couple of years with standard equipment, which the DPW has. The DPW has no standard equipment which will clean longitudinal infiltration trenches. There's just no good way to do that. And that's true of all of the waivers, Rob. We've told them what we expect we're going to require. In all likelihood, provided the design and layout is okay and the fire department is fine with it, which they've been in the past, a physical construction of a hammerhead turnaround is probably acceptable. We've done that in the past. That actually does cut down a little bit on the amount of pavement that you need instead of having to do a big circle.
Right.
The likelihood of the big circle being needed when there's only 2 houses that are going to access from it is slim to none. So in all likelihood, that's approvable. Again, it requires a motion and a majority vote of those voting in favor to waive it. Otherwise, he's got to go with the standards. Okay?
Okay, I'm good, thanks.
So I guess at this time, we can entertain a motion to close the public hearing and take this under advisement. The expectation for everyone in the room should be that we will require those final plans to be in hand prior to us taking this up for further discussion.
Right, so you can't, we're gonna continue this public hearing to.
No, I actually want a motion to close the public hearing. I think we all know where we're going at this point. We've heard twice now from the abutters. We understand their concerns in fairly deep detail. The individual mechanics of what we do is really not a public hearing, but that's negotiation back and forth between us. We're not gonna change our mind on the drainage.
I understand that, but then doesn't that mean that the whole procedure with notification of abutters, advertisement in the paper and so forth, have to start all over
Nope.
again?
Not at all. We've been advised by town council because of the recent court rulings on who can vote and who can't vote. I think we discussed this a little bit last meeting. Only members of the board that have attended at least a single session of the public hearing can vote on approving a majority of a quorum has to vote in favor of that. If over 3, 4, 5, however many sessions, we continue the public hearing too, as we've done sometimes in past practice. By the time we're done, we've got nobody left to vote because everybody has missed 1 or 2 meetings. So this way we get that done. The fact of the matter is, all this information is public, all the plans you submit are public. If anyone would like to see a copy of any plan that's been submitted, regardless of how many iterations it's been, did that just snap? I think it just did, right? But a brief delay so we can flip the tape on our tape recorder.
Thank you.
The office has those, and you're free to either call the office or provide them with an email, and we'd happily email you a copy of the electronic versions of those so you can look at them. The office knows how I can be reached. If you think the question is serious enough so you need to talk to me, feel free to ask the office. They're allowed to give out my phone number for specific requests without any question. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for the 80 Oak Street subdivision.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
So that's a motion, Lyons. Do we have a second? That's a motion, Lyons, second, Lawler. Discussion on the motion to close the public hearing. This is a statutory vote, so we're gonna, the 2 alternate members, I should say associate members, are gonna abstain from voting on this, so. All those remaining members in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Could I just ask a question? So,
Certainly.
If he needs to revise the drawings and resubmit them for comment, don't we need to provide opportunity for the public to go and provide additional comments on those revised plans?
They're always allowed to communicate to us anything they wish to. It doesn't have to be done at a public hearing. The case law we now have says that the intent of the public hearing is to allow the public to know in general what's being done, in general how the planning board's gonna do that. The actual engineering details are all a public record and can be seen at any point in time. It's not intended that a public hearing be extended indefinitely until we have a final approval of the plan. And in fact, because of the case law, it's been clarified to us. The advice from most of the attorneys that deal with town matters, including our own town council, is that we try and limit all public hearings unless there's huge issues that would change a roadway layout or things like that, that we should close the public hearing after no more than the second session. So we're going to attempt to follow that guidelines, and we'll see how that works. So back, any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we'll show that as a unanimous vote of all 5 regular members present and voting. 5 to favor, none opposed. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. Once I revise these plans, is it the recommendation of the board that I bring them by the DPW and also file them with the planning board secretary?
I would suggest that as soon as you've got a revised copy, you should get a copy of those to the DPW, the fire department, and the police department, so that they can give official comments on what you expect the final plan to look like.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening, members of the board.
Okay, thank you. So Dot, has ADGA actually filed a Form A plan yet?
Yep, it's right there.
Did they file it on a Form A in the whole 9 yards?
The
or-
application, everything's right there.
Okay. Okay, so, okay, so we're gonna skip to the next item on our agenda that we're ready to make a decision on is I would view it. That's a Form A plan for ADGA Realty LLC. It's for a portion of land off of Central Street. This is the land, for everyone's understanding, that was the, let's call it the street front land of the land that was auctioned off by the town of East Bridgewater roughly 3 months ago, give or take. What the plan shows is, it's still 15 lots, 16 Form A lots. Those lots all front on Central Street. At least 15 of those lots are residential in nature. Is the zoning district for 16 all entirely residential? Yes. Okay. So effectively, those are 16 residential lots. Majority of those lots are in the, I won't say the majority, because there's a bunch of different square footages, but they are all individual lots that under the zoning bylaw, based on their review, meet the requirements for lot frontage and lot areas. ADGA and their engineer has, why don't you,
Sure.
I'm sorry, you're,
Ed Jacobs, PMP Associates.
okay. Why don't you give us a brief description of the history here and how you modified this to address what we'd consider the future use here?
Yes, we had, we filed a preliminary plan that I think you all took a look at back on December 21st, and was approved. And at that time, I was in conversations with the chairman, and we changed a couple of the lot lines around and a couple of the proposed roadway openings to move them away from what, you know, there were some existing roadways there, some paper streets, and I had held those, and the chairman suggested that I make them more perpendicular so that they would abide by the regulations, so I did that, and then I brought the preliminary plan in, and you guys took a look at it and approved it. So this is basically the same plan. It is the same plan, except now we have it so that it can be recorded in the registry. So there's 16 residential lots. 4 of them are in the R1 zone. Those would be the 4 most to the left, numbered 1 through 4. Then it switches over to the R2 zone, and we have lots 5 through 16. Well, 15, 16, yeah, 16. So every one of these meets the requirements for frontage and area. There are some larger lots. Lot 11 and Lot 16 are larger lots. As you can see, one of them is 3.87 acres, and the other one is almost 3 acres, 2.99 acres. And then there's a larger portion, 15.403 acres of remaining land of ADGA Realty in the back, which has access from 2 different points on Central Street. That's basically it.
Okay, and again, for the record, we'll have just quickly describe one of the underlying issues that we're still working on here, and that is the problem in the wording of the deeds that basically says that all third-party landowners that have land outside of the ownership here, which is, does ADG actually own all of the land right now that is shown on the plan?
Yes. Well, no. As you look under general notes, you can see the owners of record.
All right,
Number
okay.
2, we have ADGA Realty, LLC. We have Ritter Farm, Inc., and we also have Industrial Drive Realty Trust.
Okay, so
Yep.
quickly, what we'll need to have in hand before we turn this with a signature on it is we'll have to have a letter from those 2 landowners authorizing ADGA to act on their behalf for the filing this plan.
Well, I have Form A signed by all the landowners.
All three of them signed
Yes.
one. Okay. We're good with that then.
Okay.
All right, so there is an issue in another parcel of land which is within the Hanson land where a mortgage company's title search, I'm not sure if he's attorney, he might have been just a title search person who does specifically title searches for an attorney, found the language in the old 1850-60 range deeds that basically said that any third-party landowner other than those applying for a subdivision approval or a division of land which effectively would remove paper streets, had a right to use all of the paper streets shown on the plan at the time. Now, all of the paper streets shown on the plan at the time is some 24 to 36 streets, many of which, and most of which are not buildable under today's subdivision rules and regulations.
Correct.
Case law clearly allows the planning board to rearrange the roads to their satisfaction, provided two things. Number one, the new roadways on that plan meet subdivision rules and regulations. And number two, when those new roadways get approved to the point where they're in the area of the land owned by those third parties are provided access via those new roadways. Those are the two requirements. Basically, we can't landlock some third party's land inside an area to basically, for lack of a better term, make its value almost zero, so that someone else can just say, well, sell it to me because you don't have any way to get to it,
Understood, yep.
okay?
Yep.
Now, in the particular case I'm talking about, the mortgage company declined to issue a mortgage on the piece of property because of this issue. It is part of the Hanson land, but it's down off of Oak Street, quite a ways away from this particular parcel. Solution to that has been suggested. I know there's ongoing discussions between various landowners to come up with an agreement of which the party, the town is willing to be a party to, on behalf of the planning board, that basically says that if all of the parties sign off on that section of the deed that allows everybody access on all the roads all of the time effectively, that the planning board will agree to sign that along with the fact that there be a stipulation in that agreement that says that all landowners that currently hold rights in those roadways would have to, at some point in the future, be provided access to their land via these new roadways approved under subdivision control. That being said, we're not the landowners involved here, so the third parties have to agree on how that gets worked out.
Right.
I think it's obviously, at least in my opinion, I think in the planning board's opinion, in everybody's best interest to work that out with a mutual agreement so this can move forward as expeditiously as the individual landowners want it to.
Right.
So, that being said, I'll go around the board and ask, is there anything else you think you need to add to anything that's been said here,
I
by
just
the way?
wanted to clarify that the issues that you're talking about with the third-party landowners is not on this parcel of land at all.
Understood.
The only non-ADGA Realty related entity is Kenworth Trust. Is that correct? There's one parcel over to the extreme left-hand side, the.
Yeah, that's
west
outside of our, right.
Right, so that's the only one. Everything else that's on this plan in this area, there's 15 acres plus all of the other lots, is ADGA or related, yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that Kenworth parcel is landlocked before this plan and it's landlocked after the plan.
And we're not removing any roadways that touch upon the land that's shown as now formerly Kenworth Trust
Right.
on the left-hand side of the plan.
Right.
The land in question, and I believe it's multiple little tiny lots. I think someone owns 4 to 5 lots, another person owns 3 to 5 lots. And they're like 5 or 10,000 square foot lots. They're off out in the middle of what I'd call the middle of the property, the middle of those several thousand little tiny lots that are out there.
Yep.
Okay, so again, back to the board. Any questions on members of the board?
I'm good.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm just looking at the map here, or the drawing rather, excuse me, and I see lots 1 through 10. I don't see an 11.
Up higher, it's a
Up
big
higher,
lot.
it's a bigger lot, so I just put it up higher.
It's after 10, but the name is up behind it.
Up Up on the back?
3-acre lot, it's a big boy.
Go about 2 inches up from where your finger is, straight up on the plan.
Okay.
And then
Thank you.
16 is right
And
beside it.
16 is right beside it,
Yep.
okay. That's the ones I wasn't seeing, thank you.
Yep.
So what is the thoughts on lot 11 and lot 16?
Don't know.
Okay.
Don't know yet.
I mean, there's lots of different things those could be, so I think, we really need to leave it up to the applicant to decide what to do with those.
Yeah. I think he's just leaving his options open, to tell you the truth.
Okay, given that, I'll ask that we entertain a motion to authorize the chairman to endorse this plan as approval under subdivision control law not required. We have a motion, Hanley, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, O'Leary. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, and for the purposes of what we're gonna record here, we're gonna record that as a 5 in favor, none opposed vote, all regular members recorded a vote, so we're unanimous 5-0 in favor. This is one area where town council is a little wishy-washy on whether he considers this a statutory vote or an advisory vote. Case law says a Form A plan is advisory. So we don't get into any issues with that. We're gonna say that our two associate members, Kevin Riley and Sheila Savoy-Glidden are gonna abstain from that vote.
Okay.
So there won't be any question down the road if someone wants to get into a detailed fact-finding on that.
Yep, okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So I'll endorse that, and it'll be available in the office in the morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So Dot, for next meeting, can you move the proposed subdivision rules and regulations to a other business item for next meeting? Send a copy of that to all of the board members again. And we'll plan on voting that next meeting. Didn't we already hold a public hearing several months ago for that?
Yes, but there were some
Understood.
concerns from town council.
Right.
And-
We'll work on sorting those through before, or I'll work on sorting those through before the next meeting, so they're ready to get out.
Right, and we were gonna look at the fees as well, to see if
Yeah.
anything was gonna change on that.
Yeah, the fees are gonna be an attachment, the way we've got it set up now, so the fees can always be modified if we need to, pretty quickly.
Okay, and through the subdivision that we have now, there are fees already listed in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we just wanna take them out.
I think based on what I'm finding from my research, is almost all of the towns consider the fee table an attachment. Actually, more correctly, since it's a legal document, an appendice, or an appendix, however you wanna, because there will be several appendices to this, including the one for the process you have to go through if you've got an existing street that's many years old and you wanna have the town accept that street, because we've tacked that on to the back of that as well. All right, given that, I don't see anything unless our administrative assistant advises us otherwise needs to be discussed tonight. Anyone on the board have any other questions, anything they want to discuss?
Is the notation rather under item 3 to indicate that a letter has been sent, or is that?
I actually have the letter. I'm going to make a couple of minor changes to it and have Dot send it probably tomorrow. I want to make sure Mr. Celebrity understands that if we do record a vote now because of the clarification on the meeting attendance, that we would have to vote to deny, since we don't have a quorum of 5 in favor, none opposed. Town council is still working on that question. on what the vote needs to be. I actually sent town council the case law that clearly indicates for a 7-member board, there's no exception to a 5 in favor vote, regardless of who's present at the meetings. If you don't have 5 in favor, then it's a denied vote. There's language in the I'll not come up with the name now, but it's the same name that was on the piece of legislation that the state adopted for the attendance to a meeting. If you miss a meeting, you have to file an affidavit that says that, or miss a public hearing, rather, you have to file an affidavit that says you've read everything. Say it's the Maury law, but I don't think that's the right, that's the same piece of case law that gives an example of a legal and non-legal vote, clearly showing that when 2 members of a board abstained from participating in the public hearing because apparently they had a conflict on a board that didn't have associates, 1 member could not be present for the public hearing, which went one night. They voted to make their quorum for the night 4. Then they voted 4 in favor, none opposed, to approve the special permit, and the court cited in that case that you can't legally do that. You're a 7-member board, we need 5 in favor to approve it. So in any case, any other questions here, which is why town council has advised us that we really need to look at potentially getting everything done in 2 hearings. It's not quite as critical in subdivisions because you don't need a supermajority vote, but it's still an issue on boards where all 7 members can't be present on a regular basis if you continue a public hearing. If different individuals keep missing sessions of that public hearing, then unless they've only missed 1 session and are willing to sign an affidavit that says they've read everything and all listened to the tapes of the meetings and gone over the diagrams and all so and so forth, it gets pretty painful, so. Okay? Anything else? Okay, we can entertain a motion to adjourn at this time, I believe. So we got a motion O'Leary, second Riley, to adjourn. We'll call the time 8:13 p.m. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we'll call that a unanimous vote.
It's a beautiful thing.
Spritz, my friend?
Good night. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody.
Meet in China?